Okay, so this is pretty wild stuff we're diving into today. It's like something out of a spy movie. This idea that a country's leader might actually be working for another country.
Yeah, it does have that kind of intrigue to it, doesn't it?
For sure. In this case, we're looking at Nigeria and some recent court documents that raised some serious questions about President Tinubu.
And what makes this even more interesting is that these documents aren't some random conspiracy theory. We're talking about legal filings from U.S. intelligence agencies, the CIA, the DEA.
Right. It's not just rumors or speculation. This is coming straight from the U.S. government.
Exactly. And it's all in response to Freedom of Information Act requests, or FOIA requests as they're called.
FOIA requests. So basically, Nigerian activist groups are trying to get their hands on President Tinubu's records.
That's the gist of it. They're particularly interested in anything related to those old drug trafficking allegations against Tinubu.
And the U.S. government is basically saying, nope, not going to happen.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. They're not just refusing to release the information. Their reasoning is what's really raising eyebrows.
Especially the CIA's response. I mean, it's kind of alarming when they say that even admitting they have records on Tinubu could provoke retaliatory actions.
Right. They're claiming that even acknowledging the existence of these records could put their asset at risk.
Hold on. Asset?
Yeah, that's the term they used, which is pretty much a direct way of saying that Tinubu is or was an informant.
Whoa. If that's true, that's huge. I mean, it makes you question everything about Tinubu's presidency.
Absolutely. I mean, if he's been working with the CIA all this time, what does that mean for his loyalties, his motivations?
Is he really serving the interests of Nigeria, or is he serving someone else's agenda?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And then there's the DEA statement, which is even more troubling in a way.
Oh, yeah. What was it again? Something like, Nigerians don't have the right to know what their president is up to.
Yeah, it was something along those lines. Basically saying it's none of their business.
Which is just incredibly condescending. It's like they're saying Nigerians can't handle the truth, or that they don't have the right to know about their own leader.
It completely disregards Nigerian sovereignty. It's like they're treating Nigeria like a protectorate instead of an independent nation.
This isn't just some abstract legal battle either. It's about real people in Nigeria and how this information could impact their lives.
Exactly. We're talking about potential corruption.
Yeah.
Abuse of power. Decisions being made that might not be in the best interests of the Nigerian people.
And that's what makes this whole thing so important. We need to get to the bottom of this and find out what's really going on.
Absolutely. The truth needs to come out no matter how uncomfortable it might be.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, the Restore Nigeria News article you sent does a great job of laying out the details of this legal battle. It was written by David Hunyam.
Okay, yeah, I remember that article. He really digs deep into the whole FOIA process and the arguments being made by the U.S. agencies.
Right. And he highlights something that I think is really crucial to understand. The CIA's argument that revealing information about Tinubu could jeopardize their asset and intelligence networks. It implies an ongoing relationship between Tinubu and the U.S. intelligence community.
So it's not just about something that happened in the past. They're saying that releasing this information could affect current intelligence operations.
Exactly. Which raises the question, what exactly is the nature of that relationship? What kind of information is being shared? And perhaps most importantly, who is benefiting from it?
And it's important to remember that intelligence agencies, they operate in secrecy. Their primary goal is to advance the interests of their own country.
Right. Not necessarily the country where their asset happens to be the leader.
So we have this legal battle playing out where U.S. intelligence agencies are fighting tooth and nail to keep information about President Tinubu secret. And at the same time, we're seeing policies being enacted in Nigeria that seem to align with the interests of foreign institutions like the IMF and the World Bank.
And often those policies come at the expense of everyday Nigerians.
Exactly. It's hard not to connect those two things and wonder if there's a bigger pattern at play here.
Yeah, it's like that saying, follow the money. You know, who's actually benefiting from all of this and who's getting hurt?
Yeah, that's what I keep coming back to. Because at the end of the day, it's the real people in Nigeria that matter.
Yeah.
It's their lives that are being affected.
Absolutely. We're talking about things like skyrocketing inflation, basic necessities becoming unaffordable, fuel prices going through the roof, crippling transportation and businesses, cuts to social programs that leave the most vulnerable with nothing to fall back on.
It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's people's lives being turned upside down.
Right. And it's happening while their president might be entangled with foreign powers. It's got to be incredibly frustrating for them.
To feel like the person who's supposed to be representing them is actually working against their interests.
It really undermines the whole idea of democracy, doesn't it? People need to feel like they have a say in how their country is run, that their leaders are accountable to them.
Not to some foreign government or some shadowy agency.
Right. And this isn't just a Nigerian problem. This is something that affects democracies all over the world.
This idea that powerful people can operate in secret with no accountability, that's a dangerous precedent to set.
It is, because if we let that happen, it erodes trust. It erodes the very foundation of a functioning society.
What really gets to me is that statement from the DEA saying Nigerians don't have a right to know what their president's up to. It's just so patronizing.
It is. It's like they're treating Nigeria like a colony instead of a sovereign nation.
And it makes me wonder, what are those foreign powers getting out of this? What's their motivation?
Well, think about it. Nigeria is a country with vast resources, a huge population. It's strategically important in the region. It has the potential to be a major player on the world stage.
So by influencing Nigerian policy, these foreign powers, they can gain access to all of that, to resources, markets, geopolitical leverage.
Exactly. It's all about control in the end.
Control over resources, control over markets, control over a strategically important part of the world.
Right. And when you look at the policies that are being implemented in Nigeria, it's hard not to see the fingerprints of these foreign powers.
Policies that often seem to benefit international institutions or corporations more than they benefit the average Nigerian.
Yeah, it's a pattern that's hard to ignore. And it's a pattern that's been playing out for a long time in many parts of the world.
It's a lot to take in. And I imagine some of our listeners might be feeling pretty overwhelmed by all of this.
I understand that. It can be hard to know where to even begin when you're facing these kinds of systemic issues.
So what can people do? What are some concrete steps that Nigerians can take to push back against this?
Well, first and foremost, stay informed. Keep learning about what's happening. Seek out reliable sources of information like the Restore Nigeria news article we talked about.
And don't be afraid to ask questions to demand answers from your elected officials.
Right. They work for you. Remember that. Hold them accountable for their actions, their policies, their relationships with foreign entities.
In this case, with President Tinubu, it's far from over. The legal battle for those records is still ongoing.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. It's a real test of the strength of Nigerian democracy.
And the outcome could have ripple effects far beyond Nigeria's borders.
Absolutely. The world is watching.
Mm-hmm.
This case could set a precedent for how we deal with issues of transparency, accountability, and foreign influence in democracies all over the globe.
Yeah, it is kind of scary to think that the fate of a whole country could be decided in some courtroom, thousands of miles away.
It really shows you how interconnected the world is, doesn't it? What happens in one place can have huge consequences somewhere else. And in this case, yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
We've talked a lot about, the potential downsides of a leader being too close to a foreign power. But I'm curious, what would a good relationship between Nigeria and the U.S. look like? One that's actually fair and ethical.
That's the big question, isn't it? Ideally, it would be a real partnership, based on mutual respect, transparency, a genuine desire to help both countries.
So not just one side calling all the shots.
Exactly. It would involve open communication, fair trade agreements, investments that actually benefit the Nigerian people, not just foreign corporations.
So a two-way street instead of a one-way street.
Exactly. And it would require a real shift in thinking on both sides. The U.S. would need to drop that whole paternalistic attitude and start treating Nigeria as an equal partner. And Nigeria would need to strengthen its own institutions, promote good governance, prioritize the needs of its own citizens.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is, but it's the kind of work that's worth doing. It's about building a future where everyone has a chance to thrive.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about today. I really appreciate you taking the time to break all of this down for us.
It's been my pleasure. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Remember, knowledge is power. Keep asking questions. Keep learning. Keep pushing for a better world for everyone.
That's right. We can't afford to be complacent. The future is in our hands.